There you go.
I got the option to leave the meeting.
Yeah.
I'm gonna stay online.
Okay, you do that. Everybody else, thank you for joining us. My name's Adam Sommer, as some of you well know. Here with Perlisten Audio for the big brand introduction. What we'd like to do is do a little talk about the background of the brand, where it comes from, and then we will be going into the products themselves. So with that, like I said, you can close your cameras if you'd like. We may see you, may not, depending on how this gallery goes. But for the most part, Dan and Lars are going to do the talking. So I am going to hand it over to Dan Romer, CEO of Perlisten Audio, who will give you a little background on both himself in the business and the brand. Hi, Dan.
Thanks, Adam. Thanks everyone for coming on Zoom. Yet another Zoom call, right? So here we are. It's funny how you jump on Zoom and you suddenly forget which button you're supposed to hit to mute, start video, share screen, all that, and then you go to Teams and you forget that. So each call seems like it has its share of difficulties, but I'm really happy that everybody was able to join us and give us a chance to talk to you. Second best thing from meeting in person and listening to some music together. So yeah, why don't I talk about myself a little bit and the team, kind of give you an introduction, a broad view of Perlisten. Me, I'm kind of like everybody else in this room, in this virtual room. I started as a kid, DIY audio, installed my first car stereo in my sister's car when I was 15. Couldn't even drive, but I had a car stereo. Spent quite a bit of money on it. At that point, had the bug, right? And pretty much everyone in audio at some point or another caught the bug, and that's why we're here. And I knew right then I wanted to design products, even had ideas of having my own company at some point in time, and just didn't know what it was going to take to do that. So it took me a few years to get to this point, but I've had the privilege of the last 25 plus years to work with some incredible people, learn a lot of things, and gain a lot of valuable experience. And really the primary role that I've played here for Perlisten is forming that team. And what that team is to me is a group of talented individuals that can handle each and every facet within designing and manufacturing, marketing and selling an audio product. So we've got amplifier design, software development, transducer design. We have some pretty advanced multi-physics design, which I'll get into a little bit later. We've spent a lot of time investing in a manufacturer overseas that we've specifically developed the engineers and the QA department with our own team, so that in the end, what we have is from the the smallest screw to the final checkpoint on the assembly line, it's all Perlisten. And that's to me what a brand is, and that's what makes us maybe a little bit different, but it makes us who we are. And yeah, speaking of sales and marketing, I want to introduce who's become a great friend and partner of mine, Lars Johansson.
Thank you, Dan.
Oh, excuse me. I don't mean to interrupt, but I'm going to anyway. Just want to let everyone know the press kit that I said would be going out shortly before the call will be going out shortly after the call. Sorry, Lars.
It's good.
I'll mute myself now.
Yeah. But then maybe I can start by saying thanks, Adam, to put this together and for interrupting. Hey all, it's good evening from Denmark. My short background, you can split it in maybe to 3 or 4 categories, but it's all within marketing and sales. I've been harmonized with plus 12, 13 years at Harman, working in Los Angeles as a trainee back in the late 80s, up through the 90s, living in Denmark, managing and selling Infinity, Harman Kardon, JBL. I've been involved with Danish audio components, such as Scanspeak and Peerless and Viva. for 2 or 3 years, and then I ran into a gentleman called Ken Kreisel, and we got along pretty good, and I started my M&K journey, which had a little bit of a split when the company went sideways, and I joined Clips Group when they were buying brands across the world, including Danish Yarmo and Canadian Energy and Mirage. And then I ended up together with some people succeeding in buying the intellectual property of M&K Sound, and we ran that for plus a decade until Dan rang and said there's something else going on in the world, and here we are with Perlisten, and I'm responsible for global sales and marketing. As Dan said, we really appreciate the opportunity to bring you up to speed about Perlisten. When I travel the world virtually, I keep getting hit by the question, why another speaker brand? I tell you, it's because we have something to talk about. And in the team, we have more than 150 years experience. And for sure, we have some stories to tell. An indication of that is that, for example, within the first 6 months of the calendar year, not an easy period, we all know that, but we have succeeded to establish business in plus 15 countries around the world, including US and Canada. I'm pleased to inform that our partner in the US is Fidelity Import. Some of you might know the managing director, Steve Jane, who is doing all the groundwork for Perlisten in the US. Today, as we just indicated, we are going to talk about the brand's DNA, a little bit about the vision. We are going to talk about a couple of icons, which some of you might have seen and read about, maybe listened to already. It's the S7T. It is our reference product, our signature product, retailing $8,000 up. If you want to have our limited edition, which is exclusive finish, a paint of your choice, there's a premium of $1,000 for that. We're also going to talk about our statement, which is the picture behind Dan, which is our massive subwoofer. And I like to say it's weighing just around 200 pounds. It's our dual 15-inch push-pull subwoofer, retailing $9,000, available in our premium high-gloss finish. And naturally, we're also going to talk about THX Dominos. And we are extremely proud of being the first in the world to nail that certification level. So with that said, I will hand it over to Dan.
Thanks, Lars. Yeah, maybe I can just talk a little more specifics about those two products. Actually, this is a picture of the D212S, the not so little brother of the D215, but very similar design, very similar look. So S7 Tower, that's our, like Lars said, our statement, our flagship. That's representing basically 4 years of research underneath it, where our team decided to go into not just transducer, not just crossover, not just waveguide, but each one of those facets of design, and take a fresh look at it. And so you can see in the picture behind me, and I have one here, is what we call our DPC array, directivity pattern control. And it looks like a complex mess, and actually it starts there, where we have 328 millimeter domes working together, superimposed on a waveguide. And that's where the acoustical simulations come in, extremely important, because we're looking at very specific horizontal, very specific vertical coverage. but also we're looking to take advantage of the multiple transducers to increase the sensitivity, orders of magnitude of lower distortion, but also create a cohesive sound field. So we've spent a lot of time literally just simulating and prototyping this. Even the grills on here, they may seem like they're just cosmetic. We simulated, I don't know how many different perforation patterns to not screw things up, because as you can see, it's part of the profile of the waveguide. There's a whole lot of detail in there, and that's kind of how we look at everything. But then you take this array and you expand it to multiple drivers in a cabinet, and now you have what I call handles, where you have many ways to adjust parameters of a loudspeaker's performance to obtain a goal. And so that's where we talk about what our design goals are, and I talk about the pillars of the sound quality, or really the Perlisten sonic signature, and its directivity pattern control, horizontal and vertical, and then looking at it as a whole, how the speaker is going to interact with the room. We have very specific criteria on that, and I won't talk about the other products too much, but we take that template and we apply it to all the products in the line, so that if you have an S series surround speaker, for example, we use a very similar template to take to what I want to say the next level of timbre matching. Another hallmark is sensitivity, dynamic range. Obviously, the emotional connection to music, a lot of that comes from truly being able to represent uncompressed dynamics. And kind of the neat side benefit to a very dynamic speaker, one that truly can do it unstressed, is that it starts opening up the details inside the music. And some of the people that have listened to the product, that's one of the compliments we get right out of the gates. Yeah, and then another pillar is the bandwidth. So if you take all that together, you take directivity pattern control, sensitivity, dynamic range, bandwidth, and then I already spoke about low distortion. That's a pretty heavyweight engineering challenge, and that's why it took us 4 years to get there. We spent a lot of time working on just the materials. Again, in the center, we've got a beryllium dome tweeter. Just prototyping and perfecting the adhesives used to glue the voice coil to the dome had dramatic effect on the outcome of the response. That was a project within the project. We developed tech stream diaphragms for what we kind of call the mid ranges, although all three play together over a pretty wide bandwidth. Why the small transducers and why all of them together? Well, there's a lot of neat benefits. First, if you think the coverage, it starts in the heart of the mid range, 1 kilohertz on up to well past 30 kilohertz. Vocal representation is happening with 3 transducers that are weighing less than 1 gram total moving mass, and you compare that to a typical mid range, and it's going to be 10 times the mass. So high accelerations and all the detail required to reproduce such a critical area. There's a neat outcome when you have light mass, directivity control, all working together. So yeah, that's the heart of the S7. And then, like I said, we expand that with the drivers, and what we've been calling beamforming. And I've noticed that sometimes that can make people think, well, we're creating a pinpoint, and actually that's not the way we're using the beamformer. We're using those handles I talked about to create control. So we do have a narrower control in the vertical, which is part of our belief in the outcome of imaging, and a wider in the horizontal. But control is really the key, so that energy going into the room that's coming back to you, which is part of the experience, is a good representation of that initial wavefront. Very difficult, but in the end, when you have that kind of control, what we found is room to room, the performance is more consistent. And the idea is that you're starting with a higher level of performance, and now you're perfecting the room rather than correcting the speaker with the room, which is more of a traditional way of designing the system. Anyway, that the last part of that, which probably should go back up into the pillars, is how we have taken the point of view of, okay, there's a lot of data, there's a lot of technical stuff going on here. We shouldn't hide it. We should use it. A lot of people we talk to are designers. They design theaters. They design listening spaces. They want to show the attributes of the product. So we've taken the point of view, we're going to publish as much of that data as we can, useful data, so that people can use it in a positive way to create a better outcome. So you'll notice on our website, we've already been posting polar patterns, frequency responses, full, early reflections, sound power, things like that can be very useful, and also can show you how each product performs relative to the other. That being said, some friends that I've had for quite some time, I've been working with them, I don't know, maybe 10 years, is THX, and it's surprising it took me that long to bring it up, but Lars brought it up earlier. How does THX fit into this whole thing? Well, THX, a lot of what I just said is in the heart of the original THX spec, where they had started looking at directivity, sensitivity, distortion, things like that, and creating criteria. So what it is, it's a neat way to take a third party and certify what you've done. It actually meets their criteria. So they have several hundred measurements that they do, and they have a panel of listeners that listen to the product, God forbid, and then they certify it. So it's a really, really tough task. And on top of that, we decided to go for the top level, Dominus, which is a big jump. It's a full 6 dB more requirement when you're talking subwoofers. So, a traditional Ultra, which is a fantastic subwoofer, you might need 3 of those to meet the Dominus spec, assuming it could. So yeah, that's the S7. We think it's a pretty special speaker. Maybe I could show you a couple other things. We also have the limited edition, Lars calls it, or special edition, sometimes we call it. Here's the waveguide for that. It's going to be hard to see, but this is cut with a CNC, one part at a time, from basically a butcher block of hardwood. It's kind of cool. It adds to the degree of difficulty in designing it, but the outcome is pretty cool. It's a very inert waveguide, which we found as we were doing listening was extremely important. One of the key attributes to the product. Another is this is the mid-range transducer, or mid-woofer, I really should say, because the tower plays down to 20 hertz in room. This we had to push the envelope on in order to keep the sensitivity, in order to have the bandwidth, right, and then have the directivity control. We needed very high efficiency but very high excursion drivers, and those don't go hand in hand all the time. So what we did is, again, we teamed up with TechStream. That's this checker pattern right here, where it's a interesting weave of carbon fiber, where we have a lot of ability to control the weave, control the layering, and then create a very lightweight, stiff, almost super material, you might say. That being said, that the net result is a mid-woofer that has, again, those hallmarks: the high sensitivity, low distortion, wide bandwidth. Anyway, so give me 1 second. I'm going to have a sip of water because I'm starting to lose my voice, and then we'll talk about.
Well, there's and also while you're doing that, do you see, Dan, the chat window? There is a question there. If not, I can just read it off to you. I'll just read it. This comes from Carlo. If I understand it right, the S7T uses beamforming through the array. How do you do that without active DSP?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So what we use, what's required for beamforming? So you have to be able to control the individual drivers. You have to be able to control the magnitude, phase, time alignment, whether that time alignment is done within the crossover or within physical offsets. That's how it's achieved. So DSP, obviously, within DSP, you could do infinite delays, transducer. Here we're using, like in the waveguide, you see the offsets, right? The drivers have their physical offsets, and then as you expand the array up and down, you have physical offset as well. And then the crossover becomes very complex. We don't design traditional crossovers where each driver has a very specific bandwidth and caters to a traditional filter. We use overlap, and this is actually the mid-tweeter crossover for the surround speaker. So it gives you an idea of the complexity, and also the quality components that we use in the design. But once you have all those handles, then you can do beamforming. And so well, we've kind of called it, because obviously the DSP is maybe the next level, next gen version. We call it beamforming light, because we do a fixed beamforming, right? So we have one set of criteria. We design the crossover in the speaker to meet that, and that's the design. Whereas with digital, you could have an adaptive beamforming, things like that. So hopefully that answers your question, Carlo.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks. All right, so
One thing I would like to point out to everyone then, just like with Carlo, if you have questions, please open, the chat window, send them through that way. We'll either answer them live now or within 24 hours after the webcast. So either way, they will get answered. And if it's after the fact, I'll just send you an email with the information. Sorry.
So maybe I can just touch on the subwoofer real quick. Again, our flagship subwoofer, and you'll notice, well, before I get into that, what is a flagship subwoofer to us? Well, Perlisten is about accuracy. We're trying to reproduce as accurately as possible. So that's our top priority. And Lars and I have a very common feeling about that. We've had a lot of experience with push-pull subs, and the push-pull design is pretty unique in where you have a driver, which I do actually have one here. Take a driver that you might spend a year optimizing. It's kind of heavy for low distortion, adding shorting ring after shorting ring, running clipple test after clipple test, running simulation after simulation. By the way, we do full-on nonlinear suspension design. So, I mean, a surround on here is a surround that's been prototyped and or modeled for months, if not longer, just to come up with what we have. We do heat flow analysis as well, because cooling is a big part of it. We do a 3 kilowatt amp on the subs, and again, part of our hallmark is lightweight, high efficiency. So you can't just add a huge voice coil, because there'll be all sorts of negative attributes that go with that. But anyway, even with all the effort in that sub, you put it in a push-pull arrangement, and measurements on our subs that I did early on showed 10 to 12 dB drop in the even order harmonics. So it took it next level. And then obviously you have dual drivers, so you have more output capability. And what we found overall, it's a great combination of transient response, bandwidth, low distortion. Again, all the things that we're talking about that makes Perlisten. So that's why push-pull. We do have other subwoofers that take 90% of that and are in just traditional sealed arrays, but the flagship is definitely push-pull. Then what makes our subs, what makes our sub a $9,000 sub? Well, part of that is certainly that massive driver that can go, linear 60 millimeters peak to peak. That's a lot of throw. But then the amplifier, which again, we design the amplifiers specific for our products, and adding intelligence to those amplifiers. So it's not just a 3 kilowatt amp, it's a 3 kilowatt amp with our algorithms running underneath. So we have a ARM Cortex processor that's kind of the chief of the design, right? And it's monitoring the AC line, the output current, the MOSFET temperature, the power supply temps, you name it, all sorts of different things. We're looking at it. And then what we did was we spent, and this took the better part of last year, creating the algorithm to adapt to that. So whatever changes, then the computer has a way of adapting to it on the fly. So it's kind of neat in that, or unique in that respect. So, you might have 120 volts AC here, Japan, you'll have 100. The subwoofer will see that the voltage is 100, lower it. It'll take all the thresholds and take it accordingly so that the the output distortions keep the same characteristics. On the other hand, if you have more voltage on your line available, you have more power available, and it'll adapt up to that. That's really, really important if you want to have the same capabilities regardless of where you plug it in the wall. And then to kind of round everything off, we took the interface and we did a touchscreen display on top. So that's what we call the basic setup features, and you can get where you're going really quick. It's a very easy to learn touchscreen, very easy to use. You don't have to go behind the sub to monkey around with it. And then the advanced user, we call it, we have an iOS and Android app where you can do a much deeper dive. The app itself can grab up to 8 Perlisten subs and put them on all at one time. And then you can, with the master level control, you can move the level up and down as a group. So the 8 subs, like Carlo's probably going to have in his listening room, he's going to have 8 at some point. You can move the level up and down together, or each one has its own trim individually, and each one has its full set of PEQ, phase, time delay, things like that, which allows you to integrate it into all the, all the cool, whether you're using RAW, MSO, or Dirac, or Trinov, et cetera, et cetera. There's so many neat tools out there. Really, the idea is to give you yet another level to work with those to make the outcome just that much better. So yeah, and again, I didn't mention the THX Dominus. The subwoofers are all THX Dominus certified. All of them except for our littlest it requires 1 sub. The small one we require 2 for the single 12, but the dual to 215 is 1. So really, that's our flagship models. And at this point, I'd like to turn it back to Lars and Adam. And thanks.
Yeah, I think that I think I can continue from here. I just want to say that going back to why another speaker brand, I think that Dan touched on that. We have a significant amount of knowledge and engineering capacity. Another thing which triggered me was that we do everything in-house. So we have the capacity to do all the research, but also the execution of the research, so we can manufacture everything in-house. So we are present, let's call it, all over the world, which is kind of part of the story and part of why we are here. Being a new company and going to market with a massive product range, we are actually coming to market with plus 20 products. And just to underline it, all of our product will fall into the THX category, whether it's Ultra or Dominus. So every product we make will feature that. We will achieve that goal if supply and logistic do not continue to be an obstacle for general business across the world. We have a plan in order to sell and marketing our product. As I mentioned before, we are deep into our partnership with Fidelity Import, and fresh off information as of this morning, we have approximately 10 dealers and more to come in the US, which is really interesting for all of us and the THX listener. We have the world's first THX Dominus system in process. It's being built at a dealer in Kentucky, which is going to be exciting. I'm not sure when it will be ready, but I assume within maybe a month or maybe 6 to 8 weeks. Besides being at dealers, we will also try to do our branding across the US, the various exhibition. Again, depending on the pandemic, we will go to CEDIA, which is a key place for us, where you will see the next product from us, which will be the architectural in-wall in ceiling speakers. We do take the CI business very serious. Key members of our team are members of the CEDIA Immersive group. And we think that we will be a solution within the CI industry, and we will meet the requirements for those demanding application. We are also looking at being at the Rocky Mountain Audio Festival, again with our partner Fidelity Import, and we will also be doing some cross marketing with a premium US electronic brand. We are exploring the Florida audio show and Expona. So it's going to be a busy year, and hopefully the vaccines will help so we can all move around. And then last, we will of course work with all of you guys, the stakeholders in the industry, and we will make sure that we are represented as serious as possible, including marketing and reviews, which we all acknowledge is an important part of building the brand. So a lot to do and see and hear over the next 6 months.
Well, thanks everybody for tuning in. I don't know if you have questions, this would be a good time to put them up on chat or anytime after this, either by email. You all know where to find me because I know where to find you, or at any time now and forever. But right now I'm hitting enter in the chat window. There's a link to the press kit. Be the first on your block. This will also be going out in a much bigger emailing to the industry at large. Apologies in advance if you get the link one more time. But otherwise, really appreciate you taking the time to join us today. I know things are very busy right now. Wait, we have one question. Can you discuss sensitivity?
Okay. So yeah, I mentioned that as being an important part of the pillars of high performance loudspeaker. So again, we designed for high sensitivity, and why is that important? Well, you have a fixed amount of amplifier power, right? So you can only turn up the power to a certain level. How are you going to achieve certain SPLs? How are you going to create the dynamic range? So sensitivity is a big part of that, and it's difficult when you talk sensitivity in the group of all the important factors. So sensitivity and bandwidth don't go hand in hand. You can create a very light, very efficient transducer, but then suddenly you don't have any low frequency. So that becomes the real challenge in a design like this, and that's why we use multiple smaller mid-woofers. We keep it lightweight. We keep it sensitive, but then we have the ability to extend the bandwidth down. And again, that's why we also spend a lot of time on the lightweight materials, because the mass should be put into the voice coil as needed to create the throw that it needs. So hopefully that answers your question.
Thanks. And like I said, if anybody has additional questions after this, please let us know. Please let me know, and we'll get them answered within 24 hours. But again, thank you all for taking part. On behalf of Dan and Lars, appreciate you joining us today. And we'll see some of you at CEDIA and some of you at Rocky Mountain. Hope you have a good, safe summer, and we all get through this together soon.
Thank you.
Guess that's
Thanks,
it.
Adam. Thanks,
Yeah.
guys. Appreciate you
Thanks.
coming online.
That's all,
Take care.
folks.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.